In this lesson, we'll be using Adobe Animate to draw using the pen tool. We're going to focus very heavily on the pen tool. We will be using the bucket a little bit as well, and perhaps the eyedropper, but we're going to learn how to draw using the pen tool. I've got a finished example right here, and I'm going to hide all but the original image that you're going to use to trace and to recreate. I did use different colors on purpose so that you could tell that it was not just this JPEG image that we imported. I'm going to zoom up a little as well. I'm going to go up here and go choose Fit in Window. And what the exercise will entail is taking this image and using the pen tool and multiple layers recreate these shapes with precision. Again, the colors are not so relevant, but the actual shape is really the gist of this exercise. So why don't I turn these on a couple at a time here. I'll turn on the red fill. And I did gang up with the blue fill here because they are not touching, so I kept them basically on that layer right there. And then I'll turn on the green stroke, and actually I'll slowly turn them all on here. The orange background, and then we'll bring that orange slice forward and turn on the leaf, which also includes this diagonal line. Okay, and if I click away, you can see the selection. They are highlighted when selecting them using the selection tool. We are going to be working with both the selection tool and the sub-selection tool. Sub-selection tool is basically for editing and working with the points and the anchors of a line shape. Selection tool is more almost like a graphic tool where you can select particular shapes here, and these are distinguished by the colors, strokes and fills, and I can highlight and I can manipulate using that type of selection. Okay, so I think what we'll do is I will just actually start a new file and import that template and give you some basic instructions on how the pen tool works. Okay, so I'm just going to go up to File, New, and I think for this one, for the size, I will use Full HD. And it's not so important today, but we will be primarily working with HTML5 Canvas as a platform type. Today, again, it won't be relevant, but that's what I'm defaulting to. Let's just select that and click Create. And I'm just going to fit this in my window, Fit in Window, and let's see here. Usually when you create a file, you should initiate it and save it right away before doing any work. So I'm going to do that as well, Save As. And I've got a folder here, so I'm just going to call this one Crush. Actually, you know what, just for the naming convention, use your last name and the lesson number. And I'm just going to go _01 here and click Save. And there we go. So first thing I want to do is import that element that I'm going to use to trace. And that's going to go on this bottom default layer. And then we'll create new layers above that to draw on, draw over top of it. So I'll start by going to File. Now in the import, you have more or less two options here, Import to Stage or Import to Library. Since we want it to be on the stage immediately and it's only one item, I'm going to choose Import to Stage. But if you have many objects and you want to import them at once, I suggest importing to the library, which is the tab in the upper corner that we may access later. So Import to Stage. And I happen to download this file. It's from my website. You'll download it. Crush2.jpg. Click Open. And just position that in the center of your page. By default, it should have centered itself, actually. So I'm going to lock that right away. Okay, I'm just going to hit the lock, and I will rename that layer. I'll just call it Template. It's a good idea to name your various layers and elements. And I'm just going to save my file. Now, I still have the tab for the other file, so I may refer to it once in a while. So I'm just going to click over on that tab and just point out that I have a layer for this orange backdrop, which I'll do last. And then I have layers for the green stroke and a different layer for the fill. The reason I'm doing that is when you create a stroke, which is the outline, it generates on both sides of the line, and I want to retain the integrity of this font shape. So because of that, I had to create a separate layer for the fill, which sits on top with no stroke, and a layer underneath. If I hide this red fill, you'll see how thick that fill is, and it does. See these yellow parts? That's what it does to the font, which is completely destroying it. if you want to keep your font's integrity up, you'll have to do this technique. And then I actually just saved that line work and copied it to the next layer above and deleted the outline and just used the fill. And that brought it back to its original shape. So this is really two layers. This green is underneath the red. Okay. That's the only place where I had to do that because I was dealing with a font and I wanted to retain its integrity. Otherwise, like this yellow and this orangish beige, they're on the same layer, and the blue is on the same layer as the red, and so on. Okay, so let's go back here. I'm going to create my first new layer. And I guess I'll name it right away. I'll just call it, maybe we'll do the outline. So I'll call this one stroke, which is what the outline is called in Adobe Animate. I'm going to set the color. There are two color chips. One's a fill color and one's the stroke color. Because we're going to use the pen tool, only the stroke color will apply when we're drawing it. And we'll also see as a default this purple color here. If you want to change this color, well, let me just sort of click around and demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'm going to go to the pen tool right here. And over here in my properties, I can see that the stroke right now is set to red, which matches what I have over here. And the stroke size width is set to 2. I suggest 2 is a good number. If it's not set to 2, set it to 2. There is a slider, and you can also type it in right here. Okay, so we'll leave it at 2. And leave the rest of these settings at their default for now. Actually, I'm going to set them back to what the default was. Okay. And we can start to draw with the pen tool. Now, I'm going to zoom in on this. The zoom tools are on the Mac Command plus, on the PC Control plus to zoom in, spacebar to move around. Okay. To zoom out, Control minus on the PC, Command minus on the Mac. Okay. So I'm going to zoom into that letter C basically and start there. What I want to do is draw what I see as the white shape of the letter. And I want to draw all of the letters. And you know what? I'll also include this sort of white shape in that orange slice as part of it. So pen tool is selected. Let me just draw over here actually and demonstrate how to do straight lines and curved lines, and then go from straight to curved and curved to straight. And then a little bit how to manipulate those. So straight lines, you're creating points. So it takes at least 2 points to create a line. So here's my first point. And you can see there's the little hint preview. That's something you can turn off and on, but I think it's useful. By simply moving around and clicking, you're designating corner points in the shape. Now, if I wanted to put a fill in this area, I would have to do what's called closing the shape. And that's basically clicking over that initial point. And you know you're closing the shape because the cursor will show that little closed ring icon. If you don't see that, you're not closing the shape. And you would have to zoom in and find it and zero in on it. Okay, so I'm going to close that shape. Now just to prove that, I'm going to go to my bucket tool, because if it's not closed, it won't fill with the bucket tool. And I'm going to just fill in with this current color. All right. Let me go up here and show you the selection tool. I can select the shape, the fill. I can also select the stroke. Usually with the stroke, if it's complex, a single click will select that one side. If I want to select the whole line, I would double click carefully on that stroke line. If I want to select everything, the fill and the stroke, I can double click on the fill. Okay. To deselect, I can click in an empty area. So those are your basic selection modes when using the selection tool. Not to be confused with the subselection tool. So I'm just going to click in here and hit my delete key. And that's how I can delete areas. I can go in here and delete this sort of one area at a time. You can actually drag across it as well and delete what you've selected. Okay, it's fairly versatile that way. So I'm going to delete everything. Let me go back to my pen tool. And again, click, 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 click. Generates the straight line. And then I just close the shape. And there we go. Now with that still selected, I can also delete and start again. Let me show you how to create a curved line. It's basically click and drag. And when you do that, it will not only create that anchor point, it will create two things called handles, which allow you to manipulate the nature of the curve. So that center point is my anchor. And you can see I'm getting hints on what I'm going to generate by clicking and dragging. So the short rule is the shorter the line, the less severe the curve. The longer the line, the more severe the curve. And obviously, spinning that around addresses the direction that that segment of the curve will flow into. Okay, so I can do a nice little S shape, or I can just kind of do a bump on a road. Okay, so clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. And when I want to close this, if it's like a kidney shape, I can click and drag even on that last one, but I want to ensure that I see that little circle icon. Okay, there we go. So let me just delete that and show you how you can combine. Actually, let me do one more of those and I'll show you how you can sort of control these handles on the fly. While I'm drawing, I can control these, but I'm just going to let you know right now, once it's drawn, we can return to what's called the sub-selection tool and access all these points and wiggle them around and move them at will to refine the shape ultimately. Okay, but if I do want to work on these on the fly, there's a shortcut. On the Mac it's the command key, on the PC I believe it's the control key, and it changes to this. And you see how that's changed to a white arrow? I can actually come in here and kind of change that. So I shortened it on this side where it's still longer on that side, and then continue to draw again. It's a little trickier to do that, but after a while, when you get used to it, it is a lot quicker as a process. Okay, so I'm just drawing curved lines. Now let's say I want to draw a straight line come out of this. To do that, I would actually have to click, and it's a little confusing with that preview line, but I'd have to click on my latest anchor point. And when I see that upside down V, I can click on it and it gets rid of that second handle. And you see now the preview is showing that my next line is going to be a straight line. Okay, straight lines. Until I click and drag, I won't see another curve. Now another cool feature is that I can actually sort of break that line. Here, let me just show you here. If I'm manipulating it, you see how it's kind of attached to its twin on the other side, like it's affecting it when I move. What if I just want to work on this half? There's a shortcut for that too, and it's the Alt key on the PC and the Option key on the Mac. You grab that handle and it turns into that big arrow. And look at that. Now it's kind of like, it's called a corner point, even though I'm still going to generate a curve because I've got the handle, but it kind of makes that hard corner. Okay, so if I do this again, let's just grab that again. I'm using the Alt key on the PC, the Control key on the Mac. I'm going to just drag that around like that, and I'll kind of make like an upside down W here. Like that, or a W rather, okay? So again, now if I want to make a straight line next, I click on that anchor point coming out of the curve. Now if I got a straight line and I want to make a curve, I can actually click on that anchor point and drag a new handle. I can also just click and drag the next point, which will initiate a curve. Okay, so if I want to cancel that second handle, I click on it there. Next line is a straight line, straight line. If I want to initiate a curve, I can drag a handle out, and I can click and drag if I want to continue with that curve. And if I want to just have a straight line, I click on that anchor point, and I'm going to close this shape. So that's the short story on how to create straight lines, curved lines, and combining straight with curved and curved with straight. Let me just delete this whole thing and then we'll start just one more example here. I'm going to just show you here, and I'm going to ignore my phone there for a second. If I want to do perfectly horizontal and vertical lines, I can hold my Shift key down when I'm clicking. It will also constrain to the 45-degree angle. Okay, I'm holding my Shift key down the whole time here. Okay, that also holds true when you're drawing curves. You're just going to have to get used to the result, but it will constrain the curve. Okay, so now let me actually drag. Speaking of curves, let me drag a handle out here. And again, you'll notice you can do it because you see that little upside down V. And that allows me to continue now with a curve. And as I click and drag, I'm continuing to initiate curved lines. Now again, to end that curve and go from what's called a corner point, I will click on that anchor point and my next line will indeed be a straight line. Shift to keep it horizontal and vertical. And let me just close this shape, and then I'm going to show you the sub-selection tool. Okay, so I've closed the shape. let me move up to the subselection tool. This is an excellent tool for editing. You can select the line with this, and you see how all the anchor points have been activated. And if I want to initiate and activate a corner point, I can actually highlight it, or a curved point. I can highlight that, and that gives me access to these handles. And you can see here it allows me to edit. Okay, so I can edit in there, and I can actually drag points around as well. You can also drag multiple points. So if I drag across here, I've actually selected both of these points, and I can move them in tandem. I can select this whole half here and drag that around. Okay, so that's your subselection tool. I can click away to deselect. I can either click on the line or highlight the various points and work them. And the subselection tool is excellent for your second pass. I'd say you try to draw it the best you can with the pen tool. Then you come back and you finesse it with the subselection tool. And there's no reason why it wouldn't be perfect given enough time and effort. Okay, so those are the basics. So your subselection tool is primarily for editing once you've created your shape and your line work. Now again, I can actually select that as well and hit my delete key. Okay, so I'm not going to draw the whole thing for you, but I will draw the crush logo and one of these orange peel slices, I guess. And I'm going to leave the leaf and the line here up to you to complete on your own. But I will do the full text, if you will. Okay, so I'm just using my spacebar to move around. I want to zero in on the letter C here. Maybe I could zoom in a little more and get that in place. So I'm on my pen tool. I have a red outline for the stroke color at a value of 2 for the stroke size. Red is good because it will be easy to see against these colors. And that was the point of using red right now. I'm going to change it later. So I'm actually going to start with a straight line. I'll start in this bottom corner of the C and come up here. And then right away into some curves. So we'll start with a single click here. And my preview of the line helps a bit. And I can see right there. Now I'm going to drag a long handle. From experience, I know that this first handle on the curve should roughly go like about 1/3 of the distance on the curve and go straight out in the direction that you want the curve to fall on the inside of. The idea here is I want to have as few points as possible. That will ultimately give me a smoother curve. So I'm just going to put one at the halfway point and then ultimately another one over here for this outer curve. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to drag in this direction. Now I'm going slowly, and this will, take a little time to get the intuition, but you can see how I'm getting that perfectly, and that is because I've done this before. You probably won't get it that perfectly on the first try, but you're going to be wiggling around and looking for the happy spot. If you get it even close, I'll say even something like that, you're in the game, and you can come back with the subselection tool later and refine it, okay? But it is fun to try to get it perfect on the first try. So there we go. That's my first half of the curve. And I can see these curves. And I'm probably going to have to come back and work that handle a bit. But let me just click and drag here. And you're typically dragging away from where you want that curve to be. And I'm just going to see if I can actually kind of nailed it there. But there we go, right? If I wanted to come and manipulate it, here's a couple of hints. You could go to on the PC, it would be the control key. On the Mac, it's the command key, which temporarily turns it into the subselection tool. And I could go in and grab some handles and move things around like that, okay? Like if I need to make an adjustment. All right, so I've let go of that modifier key and I'm back to the pen tool. Now, obviously, if I click here, it's not going to create that straight line. You see that big wow curve that's being anticipated. So I do need to click on this anchor point to eliminate that second half of the handle. There we go. And now I can get my beautiful straight line. And here again, I'm going to click on this anchor point and look for the upside down V to make sure that you're not just clicking a point close beside it. Drag that out. Again, roughly speaking, 1/3 of the way to its next point location, which will be about here, and I'm going to click and drag. This one definitely needs a little more manipulation. See how I'm not really in. It's close, but not close enough at all. So here I actually will go on the fly. I'm on the Mac, my command key. I'm just going to grab this handle, bring it there. And I actually will move this anchor point ever so slightly inside like that. Okay. I've let go and I'm going to click on this closing anchor point. You can see the circle there tells me that I'm closing the shape. Very critical that you see that circle. And here I actually can still drag. It won't affect the other side. And I do want to click and drag here. Well, let me undo. My mouse slipped there and I missed the anchor point. Now that's actually a good point. I'm kind of off track now. I've lost connections. If I want to reconnect to this unfinished shape, I can come back and click on the most recent anchor point. Okay, and my hint is telling me that I have reconnected, because this is bound to happen once in a while. You click away or something happens, or you do an undo and you lose that connection. You just click back on the most recent anchor point to reestablish the drawing. Here I'm going to take a little more care, click there, and now generate that curved line. Okay, it's pretty close, but let's say that I wanted to refine it further. I could now come back and choose the subselection tool and come in here and select any anchor points and any handles I wish and manipulate them. I will remind you, let's say I want to just work on this side of the curve. If you hold your Option key down on the Mac or your Alt key on the PC, you can grab that handle and it's not going to affect the other side. I'm exaggerating this right now, but you see how the other side is intact and locked down. Okay, I'm actually just going to go Command Z to undo that, but that is how you can manipulate it. Once again, the Alt or the Option key to only affect one side of these handles. Okay, I can actually click anywhere I want, and I can select multiples anchor points as well. If I wanted to drag that whole line, for example, up further maybe, just undo that move. Okay, I'm clicking away to deselect. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to my pen tool because I had moved over to the subselection tool. Select the pen tool. I'm going to use my spacebar to drag down a bit and put the R kind of in the middle. This one's going to take more straight lines and a couple of curves in that. So I'll start down over here. And this one is fairly easy because it's mostly click, click. And here I will generate a line that goes about a third of the way. And you can see there I did anticipate it well. It's pretty well right on target. Single click there, no click and drag because I want to make another straight line. But here, coming out of this straight line, I do want to initiate a handle. Again, I'll say about there, and here's just a little pass where it seems like the curve ends, and we just drag that out. Now I want this to be a straight line from here to the bottom corner, so I will click on that anchor point, and there's the circle, close the shape. Save as you go. I'm just going Command S on my keyboard, and I'll drag the U into focus here. Still on my pen tool. Drawing straight lines for the most part right now, and here I will drag a handle about this far, and it looks like the curve more or less ends there. And I'm just going to be very careful and see if I can nail this here. No, not perfect, but I'll leave that and I'll come back with the subselection tool. It's pretty close. Okay, again up here, I'll remind you on the curves, the fewer points the better. It's a good objective. You will get much smoother curves because each point is a potential bump. Okay, that one's pretty well right on. I'm going to click on that anchor point to eliminate that part of the curve, and I'm almost home free here. I've got a tight little curve at the bottom on the inside of the U, so I'm just going to drag a handle about that far. I'm going to try to come right across. It might be more prudent actually to come down in the middle. Yeah, never mind. A short handle there, and then again whatever it takes. Then I want to eliminate that second handle and connect that last dot and close the U and save. I'm just saving on my keyboard. Okay, now the S. maybe the most challenging when you're first working with this. I'm going to start down here to initiate a straight line. And then I'm going to drag this out, and I'm going to go pretty far on this, and it's not too severe, but you can see the angle that I'm anticipating, and then I will come to the middle of where that curve should be and really see if I can get that in there. And that's pretty close. Now I'm anticipating that this handle is going to be too long for the next one. See how that's kind of overshooting? So I will go in here with my command key, would be the control key on the PC, and in anticipation I'm going to shorten that line. Now you got to be careful, you don't want to wiggle that other line out of place, and give that a try. See there, that's almost right in the pocket right away. There we go. Now I'm going to come right around the bend here and go there, and a very short drag there. Now even though this is short, I'm going to click on that anchor point so that this is an absolute straight line down the bottom of the S. And now here I will click and drag and create a long handle coming out for this other big curve on the S. Going to the more or less the middle of where the curve will end up and trying to nail it as best I can. I can see this probably will need a little edit in the bottom with my sub-selection tool, but we're pretty close. Now here I can tell also that this second handle is too long, so I'm going to go with my command key, because I don't want to actually break the connection. I want it to be a smooth corner. And there we go. You know what, let me make it just a little shorter, and that's going to be perfect. All right, a short little handle there, a longer handle there to take up the slack. And you know what, that's going to work perfectly. I'm just going to click right there. See down here, I got a little repair job. So why don't I go over to my sub-selection tool, click on that corner there, which will bring out these two handles, and just play with that handle. There we go, that's more or less it. Let me just highlight that one. Maybe that could use a little refinement there, but now since I did that, I had to change that. And that's good. Again, you definitely want to save after that S. Let me zoom out, Command minus, and just drag the H down. I'll try to zoom back in again on the H if it fits. Yep, it will fit actually. So one more letter to do. Go back to the pen tool, and I'm going to start on this inner bottom corner. Now here I will generate a handle, and this is a bit of a biased curve, if I can call it that. Close. This could use a little modification down there, but I'm just going to eliminate that second handle here and draw a straight line to the bottom, and I'll come back and do a little refinement once I close this off. Okay, here again I'm going to generate a handle, second handle, and that's pretty tight in there, and then close my shape, come back again to my sub-selection tool, and where was it? Just up here. Okay, and it's not going to take much, I can tell. Just a little tweak. There we go. Let's save that, and I'm going to zoom out. So the heavy lifting is done here. I've got just a narrow stroke right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another layer for the fill. So let's just create a new layer. I'll call this one, I'm just going to call it fill. And I'm going to copy what I created there, and I'm going to paste it in the fill. I'm going to do what's called paste in place, so it assumes the exact location, and that's actually quite important. Now to select everything on a layer, there's a little trick. If you just select the layer name, it does select everything that's on that layer. That's probably the best way when you want to do like a select all for that particular layer. Otherwise, you can go with your selection tool or your sub-selection tool. Make sure you highlight everything you want to capture. So with that, actually, you know what? I will go to the selection tool and then click on that again. I'm going to copy that, edit copy. And I'm going to select my designated layer called fill, and then carefully under the edit, paste in place. Now it's exactly the same, so you're not really going to see a difference here, but what we're going to do now is we're going to come back and we'll paint the stroke a different color. I guess I'll go with a bright green, and we'll eliminate the actual stroke. We'll keep that stroke, but we'll come back to the fill layer, fill it with the bucket tool, and then eliminate that stroke line. So you know what? Let's do that first, actually, since we're on the fill tool. So let me go to this fill color, select it. And I guess in my demo I'd used a bright red. Maybe I'll use, let's see here. The only problem is the bright red, you won't see the stroke color. So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to use the bright green for the fill, and I'll use the red for the stroke. There you go. So with that, I'm going to go to my bucket tool. Make sure you have the fill layer selected here. Oh, you know what? That actually went black for some reason. Let's see why that is. Here, I'm going to show you a different technique. I'll go back to this green here. I'll select that fill right now, and when I go to my color chips, I can't fill that in. That seemed like a bug to me, but there we go. Paint bucket tool with the green fill. I have a little more confidence that it will fill the rest of these. There we go. So that's my fill layer. I'm going to go back to my selection tool right now, and I'm going to hide that layer. Here's your visibility. You might want to even lock it so that you don't accidentally select it. In fact, let me suggest we lock it. And for now, I'm going to hide it and come back to my stroke layer. Okay. Because I clicked it there, I again have selected everything on the stroke layer. I'm just going to click on that stroke on the stage, if I can carefully select it, because then I will see the properties for that stroke. And here I can now change its color as well as its width. So maybe I'll start by changing the color. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep it red. I did say yeah, because I did the fill as green, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Okay. So scratch that idea. Let me hide that again. We'll keep it as red. I do need to select it again because I clicked away. And I'm going to change that stroke. Actually, I'm going to zoom up on it so I can really see it. I want it to fill in where that green is. Now I'm going to suggest to you that you actually draw this half moon shape as well on the same layer and do it all at once. I'm just saving time here. So here we go. And you can see what's happening there. And you see how it's kind of wrecking the fill, right? The font is just getting destroyed. But that's okay because we have our fill there once we turn that back on. But my corners, look at my corners, they're getting clipped. So you can go over to what's called the miter and use the full corners right there. Okay, I'm going to click away to deselect. That's what we have. And again, due to the fact that I'm working with a font and I wanted to retain the integrity, I did this as a two-layer thing where now when I turn on the fill layer, it does bring back that initial shape of that font. I definitely want to save this. Okay, so that's, number one, that's how we use the pen tool. Number two, when dealing with fonts and you want to have stroked outlines and you want to retain the integrity, unfortunately Animate doesn't do a stroke on the outside. Photoshop does, and I believe Adobe Illustrator does, but unfortunately Animate does not as part of the Adobe suite. Okay, so I would say for the rest of the exercise, I'm not going to draw any more here. I'm going to wrap this up. Create other new layers, and maybe this one could be for the leaf. I would create a layer below. Actually, I'll do that one layer below because it's really easy. I'll call it the square. It's the background, that orange background. Now I'm going to drag this, so this gives me a chance to show you that layers can be restacked, okay? And I dragged it to the bottom of the pile there. I'm also going to show you that with the eyedropper tool, I can sample even a JPEG and get that color. And now when I sample it, it automatically shifts to the bucket tool, okay? But what I actually want to do is I want to go to the rectangle tool. And when I draw with the rectangle, you can see it's got a fill and a stroke. Ultimately, I don't want the stroke. I could eliminate it now. Maybe I'll do that. But actually, when I click on that, the no stroke feature appears outside of my capture zone. So I'll show you a different way to eliminate it. Let's see here. Okay, the orange box. Making sure I do have that layer selected. So what this is going to do, it's going to cover up my template. You can see that I have a stroke on there, right? But we're going to get rid of that. And I'll say roughly that's that. If I go with my selection tool, I can double click on that stroked outline, delete, there we go. All right, and if I hide that, you can see the other elements that need to be drawn. All right, so I'm just going to save that. And as your exercise, I do want you to complete all the parts and just hand this file in to Canvas when you're done. Okay, and that's our lesson on using the pen tool.